What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to your show. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, alongside yours truly, Mr. Big Flip Livingstone, and your boy, Mr. Steele Roden. Thank you so much for being here for Wednesday's edition, one in which it's time to take a look at some banger league beauties and a big signing from the St. Louis Blues. Let's get right to it. Thank you for being here.
Your Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It is time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast and our continuing pre-draft coverage for everything that you need to know to dominate that draft. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Steele and I have seen that love, that support. We mention it every day on every episode. That's because we come from good traditional homes, and we love showing love back. So thank you so much for all that support. We see you and appreciate you. That's why we continue to come with that heat, baby. And more is true on today's episode, Steele. We're going to talk a little bit about this Jordan Kyrou signing because this is a guy who turns the page for me fantasy-wise. So we're going to kick the show off with that. But the meat and potatoes, if you will, of this show, and yes, we do like our meat, we're going to be talking about some banger league beauties, some guys that really fill out the score sheet, hits, block shots, penalty minutes, and as such, because there's a lot of people out there been asking for that banger league content, that keeper dynasty content. So it's time to dig into these trenches with some of these guys that can rack up the penalty minutes, hits, and otherwise will still bring in that overall fantasy value with the offensive statistics. Steele and I each have our top five. I'm excited as always. Thank you for joining me, Steele. We got all the business out of the way. Now let's get down to the brass tacks. Jordan Kyrou, give me your take on this because I know you like what's going on in St. Louis's forward group in general. I think this is one of those teams, Steele, that if they can get some goaltending out of Jordan Binnington, they are going to be a dark horse to make a little noise come May next season.
Yeah, I think they will be a dark horse, especially if they can get that playing ability that we saw just a couple of years ago when Jordan Binnington and the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup. If they can if he can get back to that elite level that he was playing at back in 2018, they can be a really big team to deal with in the playoff time. But Jordan Kyrou, 8 years, $8.125 million on the table that he just signed the contract with the St. Louis Blues. It's almost identical to the contract that Robert Thomas signed with the St. Louis Blues this past offseason as well. Yes. 8 years, $65 million for each of them. They pretty much had the exact same season stats as well. Thomas had 77 points in 72 games. Jordan Kyrou had 75 in 74 games. So pretty much identical. Both centermen, both shoot right, both young guys who clearly the St. Louis Blues have a lot of faith in. And the fantasy aspect as well, these are two guys that you and I have been very high on as well. Me more so Robert Thomas, and you more so Jordan Kyrou. But we're highlighting two centermen from the St. Louis Blues that really broke out of their shell this season, showcasing that skill level they had in the first two seasons of their NHL career. But this year, in their fourth year, broke out of their shells, recording 77 points. And like you and I talked about, if Robert Thomas can shoot the puck more, Jordan Kyrou, again, playing the way he was playing, the sky's the limit for those two guys because they have a ton of skill. They're young. They can get up to 85, 90 points.
Couple things. Kyrou also can play the wing. So you and I on yesterday's live mock draft episode talked about some of that, dual eligibility positional wise. We'll see what happens with Kyrou this season because, he could be slotted over onto the wing. I could see that happening. But I think the key takeaway is here before we get to our top 5 banger league beauties, which I am excited to talk about as always, is Jordan Kyrou. When I watched him last year at the skills competition and watched him fly around the ice, this is one of those guys, Steele, that I think, we try to highlight the guys who are just scratching the surface in terms of what they can do at the NHL level. I really do think 27 goals and 45 assists is just scratching the surface for Jordan Kyrou. And that's saying something considering he is only 23 years old and that's a 75-point season. But I will say this, 19 power play points last year. This is a guy that fills it out a little bit for you categorically when it comes to fantasy. I love Jordan Kyrou as a player. I love what the St. Louis Blues have going on in their top 6. And I really like how they have their blue line to prop up this team. My concern is Jordan Binnington because I like Torrey Krug. I like Justin Falk. I really like me some Colton Parayko. I don't even mind me some Marco Scandella from just a quality aspect, not fantasy. So I do like what this Blues team has going on. This is another good signing. Your boy Robert Thomas gets paid. Jordan Kyrou gets paid. They're the future here. They're going to be playing for the Blues for a long time. And if you can get them in dynasty setups, they should be on your team for a very long time. But, Steele, if you're okay with it, my friend, my co-host, let's move on to this banger beauty topic because this is one of those areas that if you can get the right guy, as we've said, this can take you over the top. So why don't you hit me with your number 5 slot because I'm always intrigued to hear what you have to say.
Well, I was going to say it's kind of a funny transition to go from the Jordan Kyrou contract discussion to the Banger League Beauties that we're about to talk about in the top 5. Because Jordan Kyrou apparently only recorded 6 hits last year. And we're going to be talking
opposite.
Yeah, a complete opposite of what we're about
hits.
to talk about. 6 hits for Jordan Kyrou.
You almost have to avoid hitting guys more than trying to hit them to get 6 hits.
Yeah, so that's pretty surprising to see from Jordan Kyrou. But look, they're not paying him to hit guys. They're paying him to score goals and feed his teammates, with all those assists that he had last year. But let's get into the Banger League Beauties. Top 5 for each of us. My number 5 guy that I have on my list, and when we're talking about a player with high value and high skill level, like Andrei Svechnikov, who's my 5th player on the Banger Leagues list, who can also put up 69 points at age 22, but now he throws in the physicality of the game, the grittiness aspect of the game as well. Like, we're talking about a guy who was his hitting stats went up 75 clicks this past season. He improved his hitting 75 hits from last season. He's up 35 minutes in penalty minutes this last season as well. And I know 2 out of the last 3 seasons were shortened, so it's kind of hard to compare, but this kid is getting bigger, he's getting stronger, and he will fight anyone. And that's clearly true from when we saw 3 years ago. He dropped the gloves with Alexander Ovechkin in the game 3 of the playoffs against the Washington Capitals. So this younger, like I said, he's only 22, and the fact that he's now getting this grittiness and physicality aspect of his game, and he's still putting up 69 points. You're talking about just scratching the surface. This is just scratching the surface for Andrei Svechnikov, and he has a ton. He has improved a ton on all aspects of his game.
First of all, hats off to you for highlighting this player because the fact that he has 190 hits last year, I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to this aspect of his game because you mentioned it. He can also bring that fire with the goal scoring. My goodness. Last year, I believe he had 30 goals and 39 assists. Am I reading that right?
69 points, good sir.
What a good season. And watch out for Carolina this year. All the pieces might start to click for the Carolina Hurricanes. You're hearing a lot of love for the Carolina Hurricanes. Very quick sidebar. This guy could be one of those pieces. But thank you for bringing this up, Steele, because the guy on my list at number 5 may also not be getting enough love. And, maybe I will go to break very quickly before we get to this guy, because I do want to quickly say one more time about your selection. Svechnikov is going to be in the mix for so many good opportunities to score points this year. He plays a little bit of everywhere. He can play that power play time as well. I love that you're bringing up this point because he's not on my list at all. And now I feel like I haven't done my research properly. So thank you for doing that because I appreciate it being brought up. I'm going to talk about a bunch of guys after the break. Let me talk about BetOnline very quickly. First, as your number 1 source for all of your pro and college football betting needs in sports this season. First week was a bloodbath. I hope you do better in the second week, and you can find all the latest football league developments, matchups, news, and podcasts at BetOnline. It is also your continued source for all of your wagering info, including live betting, esports, and scores. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and live events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, the 16-team parlay I had going for week 1 was not exactly how I saw it going,
Steele.
But
week 1 was rough.
Yeah, live it and learn.
Very quickly before I get into a Nashville Predator here who was 3rd in the league in hits last season. That was a bloodbath of a week one. I'm out in
Yes.
2 survivor pools. I had Dak Prescott as my quarterback.
Oh,
It is just,
no.
it's a complete bloodbath. You might as well have taken that money and put it in the bin. I should have done what I've been saying on this podcast and saved my barrels for 4 weeks from now for the hockey season, but that's okay. We will be bouncing back. And one of the ways that you can bounce back in your fantasy draft next year is taking a guy like Tanner Jeannot. Because I really do think, again, speaking of good opportunities and in a good situation in Nashville, Steele and I have brought up that we think the Nashville Predators are going to be one of those teams to take a look at futures, bets, and otherwise to take a step forward. Tanner Jeannot is going to have a shot this season, I really do believe, to play in the top 6 in Nashville. It might be hard to stick, but we know Nito Niederreiter can shift around. I could see him shifting over to the right side on Granlund, Jeannot moving up the left side, and that being a very nasty second line in Nashville. Steele, I mentioned his ability to mix it up. And I said third in the league. He was second in the league behind Radko Gudas, who only hits 318 hits, 124 shots, and 130 penalty minutes for Tanner Jeannot. A guy in my league who is deep into the research on the Nashville Predators, almost won the league this year because of how much of a bonus Jeannot was. These are where you're going to have to pick in. Jeannot, number 5 on my list. I think you're going to already like that pick, though.
Yeah, I do like the pick. I love the fact that he's on your list, but I'll let you know later in the episode why he should be ahead or further up on this list, because he's going to be, in the top 3 for me. But my 4th guy that I have on my list is Jacob Trouba of the New York Rangers. I absolutely love this guy. I love what he brings to the table. I love his energy and the passion he has for the game. I love the fact that the Rangers named him their next captain for this upcoming season and many seasons to come as well. This guy brings the thunder every single time he hits you. And if you're the unlucky guy or the player to get in his way, you're probably not getting back up after he does hit you. We saw that so many times last year. He's not afraid to hit the superstar players, and he's able to defend himself right after it as well. Top 30 in hits with 207, top 25 in penalty minutes with 89 on the season. Like I said, recently named the captain of the New York Rangers, so he has a ton of great qualities that make him a great leader. And again, when you add on to the fact that he's putting up 177 blocked shots, 204 shots on goal, that's 39 impressive. Points last season as well, which was his second best in his career. This guy brings a ton to the table, and especially in banger leagues, this guy is going to be one of the top defensemen in banger leagues.
Banger League Beauties is the conversation, and this guy might as well be the thumbnail for the episode. I hope we can make that happen, Mr. Behind the Scenes editor guru, Mr. Steele, because Jacob Trouba is number 3 on my list. So I will save the talking point for what I was going to say about Trouba for one player after, but I have Tom Wilson at number 4 on my list because I totally, wholeheartedly agree with you from Jacob Trouba. And I also think he's the kind of player that now that C is on him, he might be playing with a little bit more edge. And I'm not saying irresponsible. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and cost his team, because that's not what captains do. But I really do think you're going to see him take that C to heart, and he is going to be another beast this season. We can see he can touch 30, 40. He's done 50 points. Last year, 39 points, all the categories that you mentioned he fills out. I love me some Jacob Trouba, fantasy or otherwise. This is your prototypical blue liner, and there's a reason that the Rangers slapped the C on him, because I'm excited to see what he can do this year. Wow, that's bad. Holy, take it away, Steele.
That was the biggest pun dad joke I've ever heard in my flip. Okay, I'm not even going to get into that. But you know what? Before we get into Tom Wilson, the one thing I do want to say about Jacob Trouba and why I like his game so much is that he's probably one of the few guys in the league that actually, when he hits you or you get hit by him, it's very clean. He doesn't stick his elbow out. It's always tucked to his side. He's looking shoulder to shoulder. There's the odd time, because he is a big guy, there's the odd time where he does get head contact, but that's because he's 6'4", 6'5" on skates, maybe even taller on skates. So he's a big guy, but he's always clean with the hits, or he always tries to be clean with his hits or when he's hitting someone, because you obviously don't want to injure anyone out there as well.
Hey, I was at a game a couple of seasons ago, and I don't know if you remember when Matthews actually took a shot in the back from Trouba, and it was when he injured his shoulder and was
Yeah.
out for a number of games. I believe it was Trouba against Winnipeg. That's just the kind of physicality he brings to the table. Same thing with Tom Wilson. And, we know he's dealing with a major injury, and that's why it's hard for me to place him on this list because
Yeah.
if he's healthy, in my opinion, he's top 3. He might still be top 3 on yours. I don't know if you have him up there. We'll wait to see about that tease. Now that you're smiling like that, I have a feeling you do have him higher on your list. But look, 240 hits last year for Wilson. We know he can be that 25 goal scorer, a guy who can hit, drop the gloves, and actually contribute that way. His ability, though, Steele, or inability to sometimes keep his level head reminds me a little bit of how Nazem Kadri can be so effective at times and then run right back out there the next minute and just absolutely elbow a guy's earlobe off and cost his team. So that's kind of like the double-edged sword that you get with Tom Wilson. But he is a player that most definitely any fantasy GM in banger league setups are going to want on their team. And now that I think you're going to be talking about him, I'll leave my Tom Wilson take at that, and we can move on to number 3 on your list. Unless it is Tom Wilson.
Number 3 on my list is Tom Wilson.
There
so back
we
to
go.
back. Yeah, Tom Wilson. Like you said, I'll make this quick because you pretty much covered everything. But
thank you.
Like you said off the top, you have to take into consideration the fact that he's going to be out of the season for at least 8 weeks minimum, and that's if everything goes perfect for him. You know, as he's rehabbing this ACL surgery he just went through. But of course, you can't leave this big-time bruiser off the list regardless of this injury. He's coming off a best season yet, 52 points in 78 games, 250 hits, puts him in the top 12. He's top 15 for penalty minutes as well. And, I talked a little bit about Ovechkin. Ovechkin probably can't wait for Tom Wilson to get back in the lineup and right beside him again on the top line on the right wing side.
Yeah.
Every single time, again, just like Trouba, he makes his presence known on the ice every single time. And if you draft him, he's going to make your fantasy team known in your fantasy leagues because that's just the presence he has and the big abilities he has in all the categories now. He's really developed over the last couple of years as a full-time, there is that double-edged sword, like you said, but overall, goals, assists, everything's pretty much improved over the last couple of seasons.
Yes, most definitely. He's also been able to do it in the clutch. He's a clutch performer. He got it done in the playoffs. They've used him as one of those defensive wrinkles who can kind of be a bee in another former or opposing team's bonnet. He does a lot of good things right. And when it comes to checking a bunch of boxes, once he's healthy, don't know when that's going to happen. Could be 2 months, could be 2.5. I think you were mentioning, Steele, with that ACL.
If I had to guess, it's probably mid-December. You can't rush an ACL surgery, especially, like that. They said 6 to 8 months. I would have to assume mid-December.
So he's a guy you might want to stash depending on the setup. Maybe you take him right at the end of the draft and slot him into your IR and, figure it out after that. Or maybe you have him, that option, you can watch a player or flag a player to make sure you are up to date on what's happening. Do that with Tom Wilson. Keep an eye out for November, December, and make sure you're the first person to add him back onto the team. Steele, 2 more players each in our top 5 banger league beauties. Let's get to those right after this little break here.
Yeah, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So please hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. We're almost at 350 subscribers. We're trying to get to 500 before the season starts on October 12th. I believe the season starts with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But please make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support. Thank you so much. Let's get right back into the video. 2 final players remaining. And do you want to go, Flip, or do you want me to go first?
You know what? You usually throw it over to me, so why don't you take it first, my friends? Let's switch it up a bit. Take the reins and fire away. By the way, Jacob Trouba was my 3rd as well. So we just interchanged 3rd and 4th. But please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start the conversation here. I did want to talk about Tanner Jeannot a little bit. He's the second guy on my list. I think he deserves to be number 2 in this top 5 banger league beauties list. Just looking at everything he just was able to accomplish in his rookie season, coming off a great rookie season, rookie campaign with the Nashville Predators. I love the way this kid entered into the NHL. And the fact that, you're going to tell me I can draft a 25-year-old kid who's top 3 in penalty minutes, top 3 in hits, put up 41 points in his rookie season, all while playing on the third line. Yep. And you're going to tell me I can draft this guy in round 14, 15? Because he's ranked preseason at 177. You're telling me I can draft this guy who's going to put up over 300 hits, 130 penalty minutes, 41 points in his rookie season. The shots are at 140. I'd like to see that up a little bit. The blocks are pretty good for as a forward, but he's playing third line minutes. He only averaged 15 minutes last year. Could you imagine, like you said, if he gets bumped up to the top 6 and he's playing with Mikael Granlund and Nino Niederreiter, that which is a possibility. This is a kid I actually drafted as my second last pick, in my first draft 2 months ago. Nice. An absolute steal, in my opinion. Yeah. I think this kid should be drafted round 12 lowest. 13, maybe he's letting it slide, but 15 is just way too far. If you can get him at 15, your fantasy team is pretty much golden.
I appreciate this take. Small sample size, so it's really hard for us to back it up other than what we saw from him last year. And I'll say this, and I've said it before, and I'm happy to say it again. General manager in Nashville, David Poile, knows what he is doing when it comes to grooming Nashville-born, not Nashville, but, the franchise-born players. These players that he brings up, like Tanner Jeannot, will be effective NHLers, and all of those caveats that you threw in there, the fact that he has not got the minutes that he's been playing on the third line with the likes of Yakov Trenin and others who I know has some upside, but he's not playing with those top sixers, and he put up those numbers, that is something to keep an eye on. That's why I had to have him on this list. But realistically, Steele, and I think maybe you forgot a little bit about this guy. I don't know who you have at number 1. But I see a lot of banger league value in a player like Darnell Nurse, who has taken a step forward over the last couple of years, maybe by default because there's been no one else in Edmonton to eat the minutes. He has been a horse. And I know that maybe he doesn't always bring that offensive flair, but 9 goals and 26 assists for 35 points, plus almost 200 hits, 196, plus 130 plus block shots, and 50 plus penalty minutes. I just like this guy's game. He eats a lot of minutes, 25 minutes in ice time. And like I said, default in Edmonton, he's going to get some peripheral apples. He's going to get some of those additional points just because of how many goals they score. And I really do think this next season in Edmonton is going to be a stepping out one for Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse. I think the Edmonton Oilers are really going to be a studly team this year, Steele. Yes. We'll talk about them later next week. But I don't know. The defensive position, you talked about it yesterday in the mock draft. Sometimes you need to really watch how late you get with taking those positions. And I think Darnell Nurse, banger league beauty, just fits the bill 100%.
Yeah, he was a guy that I actually looked at for this top 5 list. I love drafting him for my fantasy teams. I've actually had him on my last 3 fantasy teams, picking him as my second or even third defensive pick in the draft for me. The fact that for me, I think it was, and I know we're talking about banger league beauties, but I think it's the fact that he was only able to record 35 points last year, and he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. So, and I know he puts up a ton of shots, a ton of hits, decent amount of blocks. All of those categories are great. It's just the fact that he was only putting up 35 points with Draisaitl and McDavid was really surprising to me. But I do like having him on my fantasy team because of the hits and block shots and the shots on goal.
I'll say this, by the way, Steele, 71 games last year. So we got that done in only 71 games. But your point is heard and valid. Hit me with your number 2.
My number one guy that I have on this, and I feel like you have him as well. And if this guy is not your number 1, I'm going to be absolutely shocked, and I'm gonna absolutely give it to you, Flip. But Brady Tkachuk, he better be your number 1. Okay, you were making me a little nervous there. But if he's not your number 1 guy, he is the number 1 guy you want in banger leagues. He's probably top 20. He's a top 20 pick in just general fantasy leagues, no matter what. But he's the young leader of this Ottawa Senators franchise. He's 23 years old. He shows the passion for the game. He's the captain for the Senators. 67 points last season. Top 5 in hits. Top 5 in penalty minutes. You add in the secondary scoring as well, 50 blocks, 288 shots on net, 16 power play points, which is a little low, but that is going to improve this season playing with the caliber of players he's playing with now.
Yep.
All of the, like I just said, all of the stats, the hits, the shots, the blocks, the power play points, the goals, the assists, all of those stats, every category should improve this season because of how well Pierre Dorion did for the Ottawa Senators this offseason as GM. So he's done a fantastic job. Brady Tkachuk is the number one guy I have as the Banger League Beauties.
Me as well, my friend. And I think that was one of the ones we both could start with that.
Yeah.
We don't need to cross-reference notes. Brady Tkachuk his name's been thrown around by some, pundits in the NHL.com circle as a top 5 fantasy option this year. I think that is a bold take. I don't think he is there yet, but he's getting close. I can make the argument for top 12, top 15, top 10, top 5 seems
top
bold.
15.
Yeah, I like top 15, but I'll say this, and we haven't mentioned too much about this angle because we have talked about at length what we think the additions in Ottawa have done to this forward group and what they can do fantasy-wise. But I take a look at Cam Talbot's addition. I take a look at Travis Hamonic on a professional tryout. He should be on a blue line this year. They also now bring up Jake Sanderson, another year of Thomas Chabot, another year for Artem Zub. There's some interesting things happening here. And then you add in Cam Talbot. Now, all of a sudden, this forward group has a little bit more room to maneuver, Steele, and a little bit less to worry about in their back of their heads every time they make a turnover because that blue line is going to be improved. I don't know by how much. The goaltending is improved. We'll see by how much. But I think that does mean big, big things for Ottawa this year. The additions are the additions. We know that. Matthew Joseph, interesting name. Alex Formanton, interesting name. There are some pieces here that could be huge for Ottawa. I think Brady Tkachuk, Banger League beauty. Oh my goodness, he is that definition. Look that up in the dictionary. A picture of his face is right there. I love it. I love what's going on in Ottawa, and I really do think Brady Tkachuk is in for a beast mode type season.
I think so as well. We've talked a lot about the Ottawa Senators the last couple of weeks, but there has been a lot to talk about because of all the new additions they made, the successful offseason they just had, the excitement a lot of people have now for the Battle of Ontario as well. So that's going to be some great games to look forward to. Flip, this was an absolute amazing conversation. I love that we were on the same page. We were able to go back and forth with why we had players in this slotted in this position here. But for the most part, we're on the same page. Maybe a couple of names interchange, but that's okay. Everything's subjective. I think we hit the nail on the head here. So before we wrap things up, I got to let everyone know out there, thank you so much for tuning in and making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, please go check out Locked On NHL. They are your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Your 30-minute NHL podcast. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like the podcast you're watching and listening to right now. So please hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.